Hello, and welcome to Unexpected Productions. Welcome to Fact or Fiction, our improvised and true storytelling show. And thanks to Alex Engelberg for being our musician tonight. Alex, I'm going to bring you out here. Yep,
Hey,
there we
Tony.
go. Awesome. Please give it up out there in Twitch, however you want to give it up for Alex, one of UP's longstanding musicians that we haven't gotten to play with for a while, I think. So,
Yeah, it's great to be here.
yeah. Um, Tonight's theme is a loneliness. So Alex is going to be playing us some music. We've got 6 storytellers tonight. 3 of them are telling true stories, and 3 of them are making it up. I'm going to bring out our 3 improvising storytellers as well. So we have all our improvisers out. Yeah. So let's hear it for Adrienne. Let's hear it for Leona. Let's hear it for Mar. I need to stop saying let's hear it in a platform where we literally can't hear our audience. So did I say Mara? I meant to say. Sorry, I'm bad at names tonight. See, the theme's loneliness, and I spent the whole day by myself in that sort of disassociative state, cleaning out a garage. So maybe I'm there too. Um, you 3 are going to be making up some stories tonight. You don't have an idea what your stories are, and you're going to be telling them together, so you can't plan ahead. And we're going to throw some challenges at you to make it even trickier. So you've got your work cut out for you. And I just want to say, I think Leona's performing from a shower in a bathroom. So speaking of loneliness,
I feel really clean.
I think you win for lonely environments. So. Awesome. Well, thank you. We're going to bring you out in a minute, but I want to introduce you to your 3 true storytellers
All right.
tonight. They are Mara, Jessica, and Tim.
Woohoo! Yeah.
Now, 3 of you have planned ahead, I hope. You've got a true story you're going to tell us tonight based on the theme. And you've got one other role tonight. You're gonna be judging our improvised made up stories because these improvisers will try to get away with all sorts of stuff. So you're going to be scoring these made up stories to sort of so we can sort of decide what made up story wins the night. And I've given you each a category to judge. And Mara, you're judging the theme of the story, which is loneliness. Really, what's the story about loneliness? Sometimes when we throw a bunch of challenges, the improvisers might forget why they're here. They might forget to be lonely. There's 2 of them. Maybe it'll be hard for them to be lonely when they're telling a story with somebody else. We will find out, and you will judge. Jessica, you are judging the challenge. Each time they tell a story, I'm going to give them some sort of challenge to make it a little trickier, and they're going to have to stick to that challenge, or you're going to throw them a low score.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they're going to work really hard at that challenge if they're going to get anywhere near a 5. So you're going to keep them on that. And Tim, you're just judging the story. Do whatever you want. Did you like it? You can apply sort of metacritical analysis if you want, some Harold Bloom stuff, some New York Times review stuff, or you can just be like, did I have fun? I'll leave it to you. You're here to judge the story itself. Sound good? Awesome.
Great.
Well, I'm bringing out all 6 storytellers now because we're going to talk about loneliness. And I encourage, I've got chat up. I'd love to hear your thoughts on loneliness as well in chat. I might read some of the things I see. And my first question is I think we think of loneliness as sad, but does anyone like loneliness sometimes? Yeah, Jessica, I see your hand.
Yep.
Well,
Huh?
I don't mind being alone, but loneliness does have a little bit of a on it.
Yeah. What do you like about it, Jessica?
Oh, there's a whole lot in my story actually about that.
Okay.
I don't want to blow my
Well,
wad.
yeah.
Yeah, I would say I agree with Adrienne. I can really appreciate being alone, but I don't particularly appreciate feeling lonely.
I think when I think of like the times that I've liked being lonely, which is few and far between,
It's when I'm specifically thinking of like traveling alone, where you are alone and you do feel a sort of sense of loneliness, but there's a sense of like excitement that comes from it.
Yeah, actually, on that subject, when we were going to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, I actually took 2 days in Amsterdam by myself, and I didn't plan a single thing. I didn't even look at the tourist stuff. I was just like, I'm just going to walk around the city and see what happens. I didn't do a single tourist thing.
Yeah, I know in one of my journals I wrote during one of my years after my divorce, I wrote, it's better to be lonely in someone else's city than your own.
That's true.
Yeah.
So,
without getting into your stories, how's this year changed your opinion of or your thoughts about loneliness, or has it?
Well, I have the opposite of loneliness because I'm always around my family. So, I would gladly trade a little, I guess, alone / lonely / travel lonely for a break. So for me, it's the opposite of whatever lonely is. But
yeah, little smug to have teenagers right now.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Planned that well.
Thank you. That was the whole point.
I think we've realized for the first time that loneliness can actually be a health risk, and I think there are people who are isolated and very lonely who suffer because of the pandemic and being limited in their normal, social circles. And I'm thinking of, elderly or disabled people or people that just are fragile and can't be out right now. I think that loneliness is actually a risk to their mental and physical health as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought of that a little more this year than ever before.
Here's some comments I'm seeing from the chat room. I thought Temple of the Hut said, and man, I've experienced this. My first few months living in Korea were some of the most lonely I've ever been. Like moving and like that, especially.
Well, not even seeing familiar stuff, like everything around you would be completely different.
Yeah. William, our CM tonight. Thank you, William. Mentioned alone is not lonely. I think we kind of said that. Have you ever been lonely in a crowd?
Oh yeah. Yikes.
Or live near a city. It's easier to be lonely in a crowd, at least used to be, because there were crowds. That's every bus ever.
Until everyone in the room is somebody you know.
I feel lonely around people I know.
Yeah, I don't want to throw any previous relationship partners under the bus, but like I've been in relationships where I'm like totally lonely, and I'm like, if I were single, there's a chance I'm going to meet somebody the next day, but because I'm in a relationship, like I'm going to be in the state for a while, right? As long as I'm that person.
And that's the other dimension of it, the way it changes planning, the way it changes thinking. Someone had asked me at one point about whether it was a good idea to have traveled alone. And my immediate instinct was, should I be stopped by the fact that nobody I knew wanted to do this particular thing?
No. When I was 19, I lived in New York and I didn't know anybody except for like a couple of people. And I used to ride the subways in the morning and it was, super packed and everybody would complain because you were a person to person like this. And I would just kind of lean in and feel the body.
Oh my goodness. That's happened to me before. It wasn't cute from my end.
I mean, we were all touching.
Right, of course.
I was enjoying that.
And in my case, it wasn't an adorable 19-year-old girl.
All right, one final question before we jump into our stories, which is, do you have a song or a music lyric that makes you feel lonely, like immediately, or that you associate?
There's what is it? The Offspring. At the beginning of one of their songs, they say, "Have you ever passed through a room and it was more like the room passed around you?"
Well,
For me, it's not lyrical whatsoever. See, I was raised Catholic, and there was a fair amount of, Christian music around the house growing up. And I did distance running for years. And there was this one Michael W. Smith song, his take on Our God is an Awesome God, where sometimes around like mile 5, my 3/4 of a mile, if this was a speed mile, I would just fall into the stride of like, our God is an awesome God. And you are never together when you are doing distance running. You are trying to get away from packs as much as you can. And when you said that, that's what I thought of, was hitting a turn with a mile to go and Michael W. Smith stuck in my head.
I always think of that song, and I do not know if it's Three Dog Night. One is the loneliest number.
The Turtles.
It's the Turtles.
I think so.
But Amy Mann covered it too, and it like made it even lonelier. So.
Of course.
That makes me feel sad, and that makes me feel like if I was alone, I would just bawl when I hear that.
Mhm.
Yes. Mine is, which is embarrassing. It's Bob Seger's Against the Wind, when he's like, I wish I didn't know now what I didn't know then.
Oh.
You all listen to lyrics so much more than I do.
Yeah.
I was gonna say anything by Mazzy Star, Fade Into You would be my lonely anthem from the 90s for sure. But,
Somebody said One Caress by Depeche Mode.
yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
Dust in the Wind, yeah.
Yeah, Dust in the Wind's a good one.
I mean, my 90s peak lonely was more indie and obscure. Moxie Fruvis, Down from Above.
Mm.
Yep, nobody else knows it. I have not one other person in Seattle who knows the Fruvis.
Do you feel alone now, Tim? Does that make you feel lonely?
Actually, it makes me feel kind of proud, and it makes me like, yep, well, if Mandy were here, she would be going, yes.
Tim, are you roaming through the night to find your place in this world?
Ooh, I will look up that reference so I can say yes.
I should have been better to bring up music. We're gonna set the mood with some of like remembering those songs, and we're gonna jump into some storytelling, I think, now. And first up, Mara, you've agreed to tell our first story of the night, so I'm gonna hand it over to you and take it away. Thank you.
So when I had my son, I had read a lot of books about pregnancy to get prepared, and then I read a lot of books about childbirth to get prepared. And I had a pretty decent pregnancy, and I had a pretty good childbirth, but I had somehow neglected to read anything about a baby, like actually having the baby, and found myself really unprepared bringing this newborn baby home. And I had foolishly sent my parents away with this like, we just want to spend the first week as our new little family, just the 3 of us, like bonding and looking into each other's eyes. And I quickly realized that was a really terrible mistake. But they don't live in town, and so they left. And so, like the first 24 hours, we were just completely like blown away. And part of it was my son spent most of his time either like sleeping for short amount of periods of time, and then the rest just crying. And so after like 2 days of this, my husband and I just worked in shifts where one person would get to sleep and the other person would be rocking him, shushing him, walking around the block with him, singing, bouncing on a medicine ball, standing next to the dryer, turning the vacuum cleaner on, just trying everything we could to get him to calm down. And then eventually that person would get exhausted and they would wake up the sleeping person, and we would just rotate through. And so we were just completely out of it. And it was an extremely isolating, lost experience. And then topped with the sleep debt that we had, it was a pretty crazy time. And so we made it through the first week, and we knew we had to bring him to his 1 week old baby Wells appointment at the pediatrician. And, it took us like 2 hours to get ready. And we put my son in his new little car seat, and he just freaked out and screamed the whole 20 minutes to the pediatrician's office through rush hour traffic. And we get there, and like we're just like shells of people by then. And my husband's like, I'm just gonna take him and walk around the parking lot and just see if he can calm down before we go into the building. Why don't you go in and get him registered, and I'll come in when he's somewhat calm. And I said, okay, I can do that. So I walk into the pediatrician's waiting room, and I go up to the registration desk, and I say, hey, we're new, and I have this 1-week-old baby appointment. And she's like, great, okay, let's get you registered. What's the name? And I was like, oh, my name is Mara. It's Mara Siciliano. And she said, oh, no, not your name, the baby's name. What's the baby's name? And I said, oh, right, the baby's name, of course. His name is okay. And I just was like, let's see. I know it starts with an I. Let's see. It's not Isaiah. It's on the tip of my tongue. I think I know his last name is, but his first name, it's and I just looked at this woman, and I said, I don't know what his name is. And she looks at me, and she says, okay. And she reaches down, and she takes a pink sticky note off of a pad on her desk, and she says, here's what we're gonna do. I want you to take this sticky note and go back and sit down. And when you remember his name, I want you to write it on this sticky note and then give it back to me. Can you do that? And I was like, yes, I will take this sticky note and write his name on it and bring it back to you. I can do that. And I sat down in the waiting room looking at this note and just could not remember. I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna write his name. Let's write his name. And my husband walks up with the baby, and I turned to him and I said, can you write the baby's name on this sticky note? And my husband's like, well, sure, but why? And I was like, because I don't remember his name, and the receptionist told me to write it on this note. And my husband looks at me and he says, oh, it's Isaac. We named our baby Isaac. And I said, oh, that's Isaac, of course. I knew it started with the letter I. Oh my gosh, okay. So I wrote Isaac down on this sticky note and brought it back up to the reception desk and laid it on her desk. And she looked at me, and I looked at her, and for just this small moment, I felt less alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mara.
Yay.
Yay.
That's our first true story of the night. So thank you, Mara, for sharing your loneliness with all of us. And now we're going to improvise a story with a challenge. So this challenge is going to go to Leona and Adrienne. This is how I want you to tell the story. We're going to start. You're both going to be telling the story throughout, but we're at the start. Only Adrienne's going to be on camera, including when Leona is telling her part of the story by herself. About what feels like a third to you, Leona, you're going to join for a little bit of time. You're going to both be on screen. And then Adrienne, when she feels like it's going to turn her camera off and keep telling her part from leaving you alone. Leona, does that sound good?
So we end with only me on camera.
Yeah, we'll end with just you. We'll start with just Adrienne.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
I'm going to hide my camera
How
for the
fun,
whole time. All right.
I'm sorry. I wanted to clarify. Will we ever both be on at the same time?
Yeah, just for the middle. So Act 1, just Adrienne.
Okay.
Act 2, both of you. Act 3, just Leona.
This is obviously improvised. Thank you.
Yeah, and Leona, just so you know, you're a little quiet. You might want to move your mic
Got
up
it.
for the story.
All right.
Emily and I moved to New York City together. It was an adventure, really. I mean, we didn't know each other well, but
Well, we knew each other pretty well, Jessica, because we'd gone through college and had lived as roommates for 1 year. We knew pretty well.
yeah, pretty well. I was on the very third floor of a Victorian house, and she lived in the basement, and she had a full-time boyfriend. And so we technically didn't live together, but we had never like lived together.
Right. Cohabitated in an apartment
Yeah.
in New York.
And relying on each other. This is the first time that we kind of relied on each other. And what I realized upon moving to New York was I didn't really know like how to feed myself, which was embarrassing to admit. And I didn't even know to admit it. I didn't know it was an issue. Well, one night, Emily and I were in a diner. Remember the Greek diner down the street?
Yeah, the Greek, Athenos Greek diner down the street. I loved that place.
Yeah. And it was all like, the vinyl was cracked and the Formica has chips in it. And it felt weaker than anything that we had in Toledo. I don't know.
Yeah.
But so we were sitting there at the diner and just kind of like looking at each other. We maybe had run out of things to say. I don't know, Emily. I felt like we had run out of things to say.
I feel like we felt a little awkward only because we were surrounded by all of these Greek families, and all the tables around us had these families of people who knew each other and were sharing their food and sharing their plates and hugging and kissing and laughing. And we were, it was just two women, obviously not kissing, but trying to have the best time of our time in New York. And yeah, it was a little awkward, Emily. We had some wine. It was great wine.
It was great. And the waiter, do you remember when the waiter came over to us?
Yes. Yeah. The waiter was really friendly, and he said, you ladies, you look like you don't know what to do with yourselves. And Emily said, well, yeah, we don't.
It's so funny that we both have the name Emily. That is just right there, a coincidence that we should have just known. It was going to work out ultimately.
Well,
ridiculous. Even the waiter couldn't believe it. He's like, hey, Emily. And we both were like, what?
Well, I think after a few drinks, yeah, we were both Emily. But what I loved about it was he ordered for us, and he said, listen, I will take care of you ladies, and your Emily is my Emily, and here's some food for Emily. And he brought the wine and the bread. And it made me realize that having this meal, that this family tradition of eating together, it made us like family, just sharing that time.
I shouldn't have left with the waiter.
Well, when you left, it was perfectly fine with me. I felt like after you were gone, I was just sort of all abuzz and awake, and everyone in the cafe and that was still there, they felt like my people. And I think we ended up going there every Friday for that whole year that we lived together in New York. It was Athenos was the place for Emily to be.
Yeah. And Tony and I, we only lasted 6 months after that, but it was good. It was a good time.
It was great. And every time I have red wine and Greek food, I think of that time, and it makes me miss you.
Thank you, Emily.
To Emily.
To Emily.
All right, thank you. That was our first improvised stories, completely made up. They did not rehearse it that I know of. So I'm going to bring out our 3 true storytellers.
All right.
And they're going to put points on your hard work. So Mara, you are judging the theme. Did you feel it was about loneliness 1 through 5?
Yeah, I mean, I felt like it did did have a bit of a loneliness, what with them acclimating to a new city and finding their community. However, they still had each other. So it was a tough call. I'm going to give them a 3 for theme.
3. All right. And Jessica, you were judging the challenge, which was just sort of having the camera, and did they use it effectively? How do you feel?
Well, I will say that Adrienne, you were on camera to begin with, and then Leona, you came on and you guys talked together, and then Leona, you were on at the last, and that was the challenge. So not only am I going to give you a 5, I'm going to give you a Golden Globe.
Woo!
Well,
Take that.
one though. Oh, yeah, excellent. And Tim, you were judging the story.
Well, I think it's wonderful to see that people who live in the basement, people who live on the 3rd floor can find a connection. It's a little sad that that connection can be so broken up by just one waiter. And I feel like there's a really exciting part of the story, which is how they reconciled that relationship after the waiter days. I really wanted that part, so I'm going to give it a 3. It's a great foundation, and I am here for the sequel.
Okay.
I think
Oh.
Emily's.
We missed that.
A 5 and a 3. All right. Well, that is a great start. I think that's the first time our first story's gotten a 5. So nice. So excellent. We're going to throw it to Jessica now to tell a true story, not a made-up one, about loneliness. So thank you, Jessica Robbins.
Yep. I would like to put out a trigger warning. This story does contain some bullying. Okay. If you want to go far, go together. If you want to go fast, go alone. When I was 12 years old, I was riding high on a wave of early puberty, an intense, awkward phase that I'm not fully convinced ever left me. We were living in the small Central Valley, California town that I had spent my entire life. A quaint farming community of roughly 10,000, with a picturesque downtown boasting antique stores, coffee shops, and a series of murals depicting the history of the town. In the spring, the air would fill with the overwhelming scent of orange blossoms, and Sunday afternoons were spent driving the short distance to the Sequoia National Park to gaze in reverent wonder at the solemn ancient giants of the forest. My entire family lived in California, so it was just a hop, skip, and a jump to visit grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins. It was an idyllic setting for a growing child to have a chance at a wonderful, if contained, life. One day in October of 1994, my parents sat us down in the dining room of our house and told us that we were moving to Colorado. My older sister immediately burst into tears and screamed, "Why?" as she fled the room. She had just found out that her high school choir was scheduled to sing at Carnegie Hall in New York City at the end of the school year, and we would be leaving shortly after Christmas. Personally, I was excited for this new chance to have an adventure. I pictured my life in Colorado that night, my head buzzing with possibilities. What kind of friends would I make? I could just picture all the other kids crowding around me, listening to me regale them with tales of my exotic beginnings and descriptions of palm trees. I pictured myself wearing a heavy sweater as I played in the creek that would surely be behind our new house, the craggy mountains rising up just on the other side, and snow! I could have an actual snowball fight with all my friends and then take my dog sled team to school. Yes, I truly believed that I would be dog sledding to school. That's not even a joke. 2 months later, we were crammed into our family vehicles with all the stuff that was too important to be sent with the moving truck. We had driven south to San Diego for Christmas at my grandparents' house, so we were taking the southern route through Arizona and New Mexico, then finally up I-25. I was so excited as we climbed up from Albuquerque to Santa Fe, winding our way through the desert mountains. But then as we entered Trinidad, Colorado and broke away from the interstate, something strange happened. The mountains receded into the background and we were driving further and further into the plains, and much to my horror, the landscape grew more and more flat. We were almost able to brush the border of Kansas when we finally came to rest in the small town of La Junta, Colorado. Allow me to paint a picture for you here. This town is so isolated that it is common practice for people to take a very large ice chest in the back of their SUVs so that when they make the hour-long trek to the nearest city, they can stop at Costco and fill the cooler with freezer stuff and blocks of dry ice to keep it all from thawing. Oh, but don't forget to roll the windows down, by the way, or you could suffocate. Carbon dioxide. Even small comforts like Taco Bell and newly released movies were at least a 60-mile drive. The land itself is very flat, very little vegetation, and there is so much sky. I emerged from this car to be greeted by the soft, welcoming kisses of my very first snowfall. I'd seen snow before when we'd drive up to see my grandparents who lived near Mammoth, but I'd never actually seen it falling. In those moments, I allowed myself to think that everything was going to be okay. Surprise, surprise. There was no team of Huskies waiting to ferry me off for my first day of school. I arrived wearing my brand new cold weather clothes and instantly realized that everything I had been so proud of that morning was all wrong. Coming from California in the early 90s, my wardrobe was bright enough to make a butterfly blush. Theater sports name, called it. Everyone in this tiny town was trending towards sports jersey gangbanger look. Whoops. Also, I didn't realize that if you wear a thick sweater over a turtleneck and then sit next to a radiator, you become a disgusting mess by the end of the school day. And third of all, I was used to being one of the smart kids. We had been studying fractions back home, and this group was 3/4 of the way through learning circumference, which nobody brought me up to speed on. My grades were in a terrifying downward spiral, except for science, which had always been my jam. In fact, my science grades were so good that I scored a place on a special field trip to Denver with an elite group of science kids from all over the state. Unfortunately, in doing so, I had unwittingly knocked a very popular cheerleader girl out of her rightful place, and in her fury, she pushed me down a flight of stairs. This kicked off a brutal half-decade of bullying that further ostracized me from my peers. My parents probably should have done something, I'm sure, but honestly, if it was something in my life that happened outside of sports or a church building, they didn't really take much interest. I'm sure my life would have been much easier if I had assimilated, which is what my older sister did, but as I looked around, I realized I didn't want to be like these kids. Not even a little. I wasn't interested in professional sports teams. I didn't see the point in picking a logo to hang my personality on, and everyone seemed to take it as a given that this was where they would stay, and that would never be for me. On top of that, they were incredibly unkind. To be fair, they were just being teenagers, but I didn't want any part of their world, so why try to acclimate? I was meant for other things. So I suffered their abuse in silence. Finally, after the zillionth time of borrowing my art teacher's scissors so I could tearfully cut the gum out of my hair after class, I had had it. I told my parents that I needed to switch school. My mother was the school librarian in the nearby town of Swink. So fortunately, that was an easy out. Swink was so small that it only had one stoplight because Highway 50 ran through it. The joke was always, don't blink or you'll miss Swink. The school itself had 400 students all told, K through 12. My graduating class had 28 people in it. I was worried sick about starting again at a new school, considering what a wonderful experience it had been last time. But that morning, as I put on my baby blue skater t-shirt and donned my massive JNCOs, I realized it would all be fine. I had developed a sense of self as strong and hard as steel. I was confident because the need for outside approval was no longer burning within me like it once had. I just didn't care. It was 2 years. I could stick this out for 2 years, and then I could bounce to college and then wherever I pleased. By switching to this tiny, isolated school, my world had suddenly opened up wide. I was free to be somebody new here. I wasn't the bullied kid anymore, and I had this amazing new confidence to boot. Ironically, in being so secure in myself, I managed to blend right into the flow of my new school, creating new friendships, and even meeting my husband. Loneliness can be an opportunity. Those days when I was at my lowest, my most miserable, I was really getting to know myself. I figured out what it is that makes me happy, and if it made me happy, then I really didn't care what anyone else thought of it or me. I learned how to entertain myself, and as a result, I really crave my alone time. Most importantly, I learned that if you're unhappy, you're only one decision away from changing your entire situation at any given time. We are in the middle of a really unique opportunity here. These unprecedented times are also an unprecedented opportunity. You have a chance to get to know yourself and those closest to you in a way that you would otherwise have never had. You can try on all the skills you've always wanted to learn without worrying who's watching. For example, I've been taking this time to learn how to tap dance, and I've been finding so much joy in the practice. And this time is rapidly coming to a close. I urge you to take advantage of it. Get to know yourself. Take the time to really sit with yourself and understand how and why you make decisions so you don't run around trying to chase those fleeting highs in place of having the life you want to have. You're the architect of your life, and you can become who you want to be.
Yay. Oh.
Thank you, Jessica. I'm always
Loved it.
applauding and enjoying the story, and I forget to turn my camera on because I don't have a I need voice activated camera on. Thank you for your story. You know, we've had New York and La Junta, and La Junta is the one that that someone is from in the audience. So
What?
Wow.
yeah,
What?
so one of our audience
There is no way that's true. Oh my God, that is so obscure.
So, great. Well, thank you for your story. It's time for another improvised story, another challenge. We have 3 stories left tonight, and the next one is going to be improvised. And Shannon, you haven't gotten to tell a story yet tonight, so you and Adrienne are going to share this challenge. And here's what it is. I have a deck of cards, which my blue screen prevents you from seeing. Magic cards. Woo! I picked it, but it's got a bunch of objects, and I picked all the loneliest looking objects to me out. I'm going to draw from this deck 3 of them, and you're going to have to tell us a story that uses those 3 objects in some way. It could be literal, it could be metaphorical, you could just get the theme in. We'll let the challenge judge decide. The 3 objects I'm seeing are, on the top is the moon, blankets, and let me draw, and forget-me-nots. So blankets, the moon, and forget-me-nots are your 3 objects for the story. So I leave it to you.
It was pitch black. You couldn't see anything.
Not a thing.
We just kept looking at each other and then looking around us, just searching for something.
Anything.
I'd always told Paula that I was so scared of being forgotten, right? Everywhere I've ever gone, everyone I've ever been with, I always felt like they forgot me, even though I was standing right there next to them.
I heard Karen tell me that, you know, and when we were in that really dark place, I just wanted to take off, you know, and so I did. I took my blanket, the one that I had, and I ran.
And so there it was. My worst fears come true. The person I loved most, who I was stuck in this vast nothingness, I was alone, and she had left.
I did. I left because I I was looking for the light. I mean, I have this thing, like, I don't know, I'm like a plant or a flower or something. I just need to be around some kind of a source of light. I panicked and I left. And I felt so bad about it.
I was, faced with my worst fear, and I thought, what's something that's given me comfort in times where I felt like this before? And I thought of the nursery rhyme, The Man on the Moon. And literally right as I thought of that, I saw it. It was like I had willed it into being. It was the first time I really felt like what it was like to have my power, is that I thought of something and I brought the light. I brought the moon.
So I was, on the main street at this point and standing underneath the street light. And I looked up and I just thought, like, oh my gosh, but I'm in the middle of the city and on this street with these lights, I can't see the stars, right? I can't feel my friend's hand. I can't listen to the silence. So I put my blanket around me, that itchy wool blanket, and I walked back to Karen.
And it was like another light returned, right? We could see everything. And Karen, Paula, even though she left me, was brighter than she'd ever been, because I felt like for the first time, I saw me, I saw my power, and she could see me. Right? And so we came rushing back together and we hugged, and I got in her blanket too, and we were able to put it on the ground, right? And as we looked up again, it wasn't just the moon, it was the stars. And all that light in the sky lit up these green redwoods that were around us that were so much taller and bigger than us. And we were still there alone, but it was like we were a part of something bigger.
Well, yeah. We intertwined our fingers and we looked up at the sky and we felt the vastness of that and our friendship.
And our friendship would face other challenges, and I felt like once I made the moon come back, I could do anything. So in other times in my life where I felt lonely, I always channel that moment of, Karen and I, Paula and I, oh my gosh, Paula, Karen, oh my gosh, Paula and I there together, and I knew I could do it again.
I was gonna say, Karen got a little full of herself after she called down the moon. But that's what made her even more yummy. And she's the best friend
ever. Awesome. Thank you for that story, that made up story. Now we're going to bring out the judges to tell us what's their take on this story for theme, challenge, and story. Mara, where are we on theme?
Oh, I thought they really captured the poetry of loneliness. So I'm going to give them a 4.
A 4. All right. And the challenge was to really use those 3 objects, which were blankets, the moon, and forget-me-not. Jessica, how'd they do?
I definitely heard moon. I know they were on a blanket. I don't recall if I heard about the flowers though. So I'm gonna go ahead and give them a 3.5 and a Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Award.
All right. Well, fortunately, my computing scoring system can do fractions, aka my notebook. So Tim, what score do you give the story?
They brought the moon. They made it meaningful. I will simplify your math by also giving that a 3.5 and a lunar eclipse.
What?
And a lunar eclipse. We'll see how that adds in. All right. Well,
round that.
All right.
It's eclipse, so there's nothing. Okay.
Well, I was kind of excited for the fraction because it was going to prevent a tie, but now we've actually tied the first two stories with the both at 11, I believe. So oh no, yep, that's right. So so we have two stories at 11. We have two stories left. One of them's true, and one of them will have a chance to beat one of the existing two stories. So we'll see. But in the meantime, Tim, actually, before I bring you out, I do want to announce a couple of things. This show continues on through several more weeks. Next week's theme is going to be heroes and villains. So that'll be 7 p.m. Saturdays, heroes and villains. We got 3 great storytellers lined up, 3 great improvisers. So so look forward to that. It's also not too late, I believe, to sign up for the storytelling class, which Kent Whipple, co-director of the show, teaches on personal storytelling. And I wrote down the name of that class, which I always forget. It's I believe telling stage-worthy stories. Does that sound right?
That sounds right.
I will make sure we get a link in the chat for that. I highly recommend it. I've taken it. My partner Janine's taken it. I know tons of other people have taken it. It's great. Whether you want to be a performer or just like want to like explore storytelling, or maybe, you know, be able to tell stories at parties, or maybe you just want to hang out with some storytellers, because in my experience, people like to tell stories tend to be nice people. Like, depending on what kind of stories they tell, I guess. So check that out. Oh, awesome. It's already on the website. Thank you, William. So check that out, telling stage-worthy stories with Kent Whipple. We have a ton of other improv classes as well, which you can take online. They're not in person. So wherever you are in the world, you can take improv classes with us right now. So check that out. Highly recommend it for everyone. Cool. Tim, now that I've given the whole spiel, you've brought us a story about loneliness.
Yeah. So when the pandemic hit, I got very isolated very quickly. I live alone. I have a job that can be done remotely. Most of the people I know are either theater folks, theater was cut off, or had young children. And that was their world. They were tied up. So I would fall into a mode where I'm working remote and I am taking terribly long walks. And when I would call my parents during walks, they would always ask, how far are you going? Where are you going? And I would have no answer, which was strange to them, but very sensible to me. Because when they walk, they go places. I am going 4 miles to work out. I am going to the Jewel for groceries. I am going. To walk without knowing how far you're going is wandering. But I wasn't wandering, I was exploring. For me, this was all about seeing every corner of the neighborhood and finding out what was around all those bends you hadn't been to. And the thing about exploring, the difference between exploring and wandering, is that exploring is always for someone. You are bringing something back. The wanderer drifts, but the explorer looks so that they can tell the story of what they saw. Fill in the blanks in the map, come back with something more. Have a life that's a little bit richer, with a little bit more to share. But after a few months, you start running out of places to explore. The things within walking distance have been walked. You need to go bigger. And the doom scrolling starts to catch up, and the back of your head starts to fill with the anxious moments. And I found myself going back to hiking. I took a week and a half off. And after 2 days of just being very, very lazy, I made myself go uphill. I was alone, but I was there to explore. I knew I was going to be in the woods for 3 days, probably 4, doing a loop above the North Fork Sauk River, up into the ridges below Glacier Peak. Now, if you look at it as a planner, it'll look like this, just lines and colors. And that's different than the things I would bring back for my siblings, who are also hikers, who I used to get out hiking with once every year. They live in the Midwest. They're in flat places. They don't get to start rising up into a cloud on your second day, because now you're at the head of a valley and it's time to go up. I had to go up 3,000 feet under 3 miles to get to White Pass, and then it would start getting jagged and up and down. And I knew this was the kind of story that I could tell my brother and my sister, show them the pictures and give them the moments and try to make them jealous. And in that, I would explore for them. In one pocket of the cargo shorts, because let's face it, cargo shorts are amazing. Everyone makes fun of them, but they are lightweight, they are comfortable, and you can wear them all summer. I make no apology. In one end of the cargo shorts, I have Catbert, a stuffed Catbert. As a good friend of mine decided that all the stuffed animals in her apartment were now a company, and she would post pictures of their soap opera dramas to Facebook. And that was how she would connect to people in the middle of this. And after Catbert had disgraced himself, Catbert, the HR head, caught having an affair with someone in the office, Flossie the Flamingo, I was given Catbert and charged to take him on adventures as he sought to redeem himself from the wilderness. And Catbert was not alone through this. Catbert was not just an excuse to stop sometimes and play with the camera. I had a little dinosaur that I had been given by a good friend a couple of years ago. And Tiny Dino and his friend Nally Jean would sometimes have adventures in the outdoors. And I would always tell myself that for my nephews, who are 6, 4, and desperate for stories in which I encounter a bear, which sadly almost never happens, and also gladly almost never happens, well, I could take pictures and get material for Uncle Tim Explores videos, and use that to explore for them. And over 4 days, I cleared my head. I saw places. I found all of these things. One of the rules of hiking is that if something on the map doesn't have a name, you get to name it. Which is why when I got to Kodak Mountain and I thought, I'm alone, I can just see what's up that next rise. And I found a flat place, a little clearing just big enough for a wildcat campsite. There was no water, but I'd tanked up a mile before. So I could just sit there going back and forth, looking north at the gorgeous sunset over Glacier Peak and south at the clouds over Meander Meadow, and decide that as the Firebird cloud descended to a peak for the 4th hill on the right that had no name, that was Phoenix Point. It was a good trip, and I say all of this because it also helped me make sense of something that a teacher had told me years ago. I'd taken a screenwriting class from a man named Stuart Stern, who was a grand old man of Hollywood and a terribly kind man, and a man who had served in the infantry during the Second World War. He was from a rich family, probably could have got out of a draft, probably could have got a commission, but he said, no, I want to do my part. And after screwing up a bayonet drill, he was assigned to a unit full of people who had screwed up one thing or another in basic training, but none of them badly enough to be disqualified. So there's this division that's mostly men meant to take care of the garrison duties while others stood on the front line. somebody decided that they should spend a couple days getting experience up front in a quiet place in the Ardennes forest in the winter of 1944, which was where the biggest German counterattack of the war against the Allies came. For 6 weeks, that unit was driven backwards in the snow. And Stuart told exactly one story of that, explaining that they slept in nines. 3 men on the ground, 3 men lying perpendicular across them, and 3 more across them. As he put it, the ones on the bottom got the mud, the ones on the top got the wet, but the ones in the middle were just warm. I would say, I've never slept better than it was when it was my turn to be in the middle. Now, think about what the rest of your day must be like for that to be the highlight. Especially if you got a sleep number or a Tempur-Pedic or any of those things they advertise on podcasts. Everything happening in that. A disorderly retreat in the snow. You don't know when you're going to meet supplies. You don't know what language the next people who catch up to you are going to be speaking. You're in a forest, you can be snuck up on. You can be shelled. And through all of that, what Stuart chose to bring back was sleeping in nines and the warmth of the middle. Because when you explore, you don't just bring back, you choose what to bring back. And you choose what to leave behind. My nephews don't need to know how on the 3rd day of that hike I got down to Blue Lake and my mind was slow. I decided to stop and take a rest afternoon, use my reserve food there, because I sat down by a lake and I sipped water and I couldn't gulp. I could only sip. And my mind was just quick enough to realize that this was a bad sign. I wasn't in danger, but I could see it from there. Because I had 11 miles between that lake and the next water source. They just don't need to know. They know they can hear that my head was cleared, but they don't need to know that it was exhaustion driving the capacity for any other thought away, which was responsible. There was a phrase that had started creeping into my head the month before. It started out as a reminder to keep going, just brains on the inside. And it turned into a celebration. Oh, look at that sunset, brains on the inside. And out on that trail, it turned into Bodhi, just the acronym, and that turned into FIDO, F it, drive on. Because yeah, you're a little more tired than you should be, and you could really use another 8 ounces of summer sausage, and you're counting your last Cliff Bar by the 10th. You get to choose what to leave behind. And through all that, what I choose to bring back is the fact that you can do these things, the fact that you can see these things. You can open these vistas before you, and you can wash away so many smaller things that fill screens, all these little connections with the internet that give you people's anxieties and none of the rest of the story. And I choose to bring back the fact that when a tiny dinosaur and an HR executive out to redeem himself get all the way up to the ruins of an old fire lookout on Johnson Mountain, they can bend steel if they try hard enough. And if my nephew's asked, that's what I'll tell them. I may never mention the rest of the picture like I have tonight for you, but it was honest. Stuart chose to be lonely by not telling us his full story. he chose to be kind through that loneliness. And I think there's something to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah.
Glad you made it back. We have time tonight for one last improvised story. Our final story of the night will be made up. It will be about loneliness, and it will feature our only two improvisers who have not yet story told together, Shannon and Leona. So for this final story, here's my challenge for you. Actually, a quick question. Would you all would the two of you describe yourselves as introverts or extroverts?
I'm an extrovert.
I'm both.
Okay. Well, I'm always curious with performers. Performers can play both, I believe. You're both performers. So we're going to do a transfer scene. I want you to channel your biggest, one of you is going to start by channeling your biggest introvert, and one of you is, or maybe smallest introverts, the better adjective, and one of you is going to start as challenging your biggest or smallest extrovert, whatever you see it as, and you're going to switch places during this story and end up on the opposite side of that spectrum. Does that make sense?
Okay.
All right, and I'll just let you all figure out who starts where.
It was a really, really, really big night. And before every big night, we have a ritual. And it's Kathy telling me that I have to do it, even though I do not want to.
The ritual goes like this. You have to do it. You have to get out there and you have to mingle. You have to meet people. This is our life. This is our night. Terry, this is your life. You have to do it. And then we do our magic handshake. Bump, 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 bump. Right?
So by the time we get to the hair flip, I always agree to go, even though I don't want to, even though I'd rather be home reading Harry Potter for the 50th time. I've already owned them. There's no money going to J.K. Rowling. Don't worry about that. So it was
get to the hair clip. Yeah, we get to the hair clip and I'm like, this is your night for the best style of your life. It's your night and you're going to get the style, you're going to get the look, and then when we go out to mingle, you're gonna knock them dead, baby. You're gonna knock them dead, and we're gonna do a few selfies after you get that hair done.
Yeah, so it was actually Kathy's night, and there's no one more important to me than Kathy, right? So I wanted to go and support her. She was getting an award at her job for being there for so long and being so awesome at it, right? I don't remember, what was the exact name of the award? I don't remember, I just remember it was the Kathy's Awesome Award, and obviously I will attend that event for you.
I think it was President's Club. I don't know, something like that. Yeah, it's a big deal. It's a big deal, but.
But this was the first of Kathy's many awards, right?
And I needed you there. I needed you there because you're my bud, you're my sis. We do all of these big nights together, and again, you had to lick the nines. I licked the nines. We were in the moment because you don't want to miss out on a moment of a lifetime like this without your best friend being there, and it meant so much to me that you were there.
And I was. We made it there, and Kathy's giving this big presentation, and I've just got her voice in my head. You can do this. You have to mingle. Someday you can get an award like me if you just talk to other people. So I sort of look around, and I just keep sitting there.
Well, she kept sitting there, but then people, as I was getting attention for my award, started coming to the table and started talking to you. And then as they started talking to you or about why we were there, all of a sudden you started getting a lot of attention. And by the time I got my award, I actually had a hard time finding you. And I had my award and I had got a lot of accolades. I got the pats on the back. But I was over by the bar looking for you.
I couldn't see Kathy anymore. I could just see flashes of people So here's the thing. We got the hair flip, we got the hair clip, we got it all down. And so that was the first time I had worn this specific hair clip that I had made. It was pink and it had little purple polka dots. And it actually specifically had a tiny dino on it that I put in. And it was just, people could see it from a mile away because it was like right there.
A lot of people talked to you about it.
They did. And so I had to keep talking about it. And I found that once people were talking to me about my style, I felt I could channel Kathy, right? I could feel the source of Kathy within me and all her energy. And I said, you will mingle. And I mingled, I mangled, I mongled, I did it all.
You were on the dance floor. People were dancing with you. They were asking for your number, asking for your email. You got a job offer. I sat down and I looked at the program for the night. I couldn't believe that my name was on the program, but you were the center of attention.
I mean, it was the night that I met Todd. Everything came from that night that was supposed to be for Kathy. And so I looked for Kathy, and I finally found her sitting looking at the program of her big event. And I said, Kathy, you have to come dance. You have to come dance. You have to come dance. Single Ladies was playing. It was our song. It was the time. It was our moment.
I went out there. I was out there.
She was out there, but she wasn't out there.
I guess I just felt a little bit like I had peaked, and what's after this? Everybody was having a good time, but I really wanted somebody in my corner, and you were there with Tom, and
so I pulled Kathy to the bathroom, and I gave her one of those classic Kathy pep talks, right? Because I was being her tonight, and I looked at her and I said, you can do this. We can do this. I know you'd rather be at home reading. We are here. This is your night. And while yes, I have, gotten job offers and lots of connections tonight, I'm here for you, and I couldn't be here doing any of this without you. So you have to, and you can, and I love you, and I want you to.
And so I did. I came back out, and I joined you and Tom and everyone else on the dance floor, and I slowly kind of faded out of the party, and I heard the music and I saw you there. And as I exited the building, I opened the door, and the expanse of the night sky was actually a little more lively than everything in that room. And I felt connected. I looked at the moon, and I was just really grateful to have that night.
And I looked around at everyone around me, and these were the same people that were around me earlier who I couldn't talk to at all. And I realized I had talked to every single one of them. And they were kind of like the flickers of the stars in the sky outside. It was like a world of possibilities within each of them.
The cab driver dropped me off down by Lake Union, and I just walked around the lake, and I thought about the night, and I thought how lucky I am.
I wish Kathy was still there with me, but I couldn't. I felt so alive. I could not let that night end. I kept drinking, maybe a little more than I should have, but I can never turn down champagne, and it was a champagne heavy night, but I kept drinking and dancing, and I told Kathy everything the next morning and how she made it possible. And while she still does have to give me Kathy pep talks,
very few now. I find that knowing that you found that spark and it overcame you like firecrackers, and you lit up the room, there's no pep talk needed. It's just the light that comes from you now. And I just am so grateful that we had that one night, and now that you've become the PR manager for the firm, and I am writing from home. It's just a really cherished memory.
All right, thank you. Our final improvised story of the night, Storytellers. Let's see how where you think the story landed. Mara, the theme loneliness. Was this a story about loneliness?
Well, I do want to give Shannon props for really trying to convey the internal sense of loneliness of an introvert. However, I am going to give it a 3.
3. All right. And Jessica, the challenge. Did they hit that challenge?
Yes, I definitely was able to tell exactly who was an extrovert at what point and who was an introvert. So I'm going to go ahead and give that one a 5. And also, I'm going to give them a Downtown Renton Business Associates Award.
Hey.
Nice. All right, Renton. Okay, and Tim, you're just judging the story. Where do you think it came in?
Yeah. They were on a journey and you could see it in their eyes. It is lovely when the voices and the faces and the eyes all register it. I am going to give that a 4.2, and thanks in honor of those eyes, 50% off at Carmody's Optometry of Renton.
Oh,
Where the award is from too.
So I'm summing it up, and coming in with a numerical score of what's that, 12.2 plus those Renton awards. So the sky's the limit on the numerical value.
Yeah, that's all the way up there.
Of that, then I believe that that final story was the winning story of the night. So the other 2 stories were pretty close. So none of those stories need to feel lonely. They were all right up there. So let's bring everyone out. All right. So thank you so much. Thank you, Tim, Mara, Adrienne, Leona, Shannon, Alex. We miss you, Alex. So thanks for jumping in and playing tonight. Next week, 7 p.m. this time is Heroes and Villains. We have 3 storytellers, Ari Scheller, Eliza Fermansky, and Randy Dixon. We have 3 improvisers, Lindsay Grimm, Cynthia Lair, and Cheryl Platts. I'll let you all decide who the heroes and who the villains are, or you can come check it out. I won't be here the next week, but UP favorite Greg Stackhouse will be here running the show. So make sure and check it out. Heroes and Villains next week, same place, twitch.tv/Unexpected Productions. Thanks so much and have a good night.
Thank you, Alex.
Yes, thank you, Alex. Goodbye, Twit.
Bye, everybody.